For more on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, we're now joined by Mpumelelo Zikalala from the Zikalala Attorneys. He is a legal practitioner for more insight on that case. Mpumelelo, thank you so much for joining us this evening here in SABC News. Always a pleasure talking to you about legal matters. Perhaps let's start off with just your thoughts and your take on the proceedings that took place today, and of course those startling revelations coming out from the lead investigator there, Gininda, saying that this was more of a hit than a robbery gone wrong.
Good evening to you, good evening to your viewers. I think if I was the prosecution, I would have started, or the very first witness would have been the witness, the IO, Mr. Gininda. Because what he has done is painted a very good picture, in a picture that says this is what probability would have taken place and the motive behind of the sequence of events that took place on that particular night. With that particular motivation, then the pieces are easier to piece together when you take into account the forensic investigation, when you take into account the confessions that have taken place. But it is not too late for his information or the information that has been introduced by him now. It does not mean, though, that that particular information must be taken as the gospel truth. There are a few loopholes here and there that will need to be investigated. For example, why did it take so long for the confessions to be obtained? Why was it obtained earlier? So all those sort of questions probably are going to be asked by the defense at a later stage.
And I mean, this is taking place with a trial, within a trial. Why are we only hearing about this now? Why are we hearing about, this affidavit from Gininda? And what does it mean entirely for this trial within a trial?
Even though we can't dictate to the prosecution how they're going to prosecute their case, however, you're asking a very important question, because in the mind of the presiding officer, it would have been easier to piece the pieces together if you've had this information much earlier on. Unless if the state is alleging that whatever Mr. Gininda is saying is not entirely true, the motive is totally different from what they believe the facts of the case are. But nonetheless, whether we would have heard it earlier or we're hearing it now at this particular stage in time, the most important point is that it is now on record. It is now has to be taken into account by the court. It is one of the pieces of evidence that will have to be assessed by the presiding officer. And during cross-examination is one of the things which are going to come across. And I think what the prosecution is doing is to lay a very good foundation to try and move away or decrease the chances of a Section 174 application succeeding. Remember, with that application, you then mean there's no evidence which is sort of compelling against me to go into that particular box and explain myself. So on that basis, you must find me not guilty. Now, in this one, you have an affidavit which sort of paints a picture of rationality, paints a picture of probability, paints a picture that maybe it could have been that the sequence of events were indeed in the manner in which Mr. Gininda said. So it will help or assist the presiding officer to hear what the accused are going to say. So I think it's one of the reasons, or maybe part, why we're hearing this information now.
And of course, many South Africans have continued to criticize this case and calling it wishy-washy. And, you know, looking at the information coming out today from the lead investigator, also they, you know, talking about Bongani Gininda, saying that he was willing to testify against his co-accused. Would you say, for many South Africans who are busy saying that, you know, we're never going to get to the bottom of this, that this case or this trial is now beginning to take some sort of shape?
Well, you could say so, however, it's a bit too early. Remember that the defense has always stated that they were being coerced. There was some type of pressure which was applied to them. They were traveling during late nights for long hours of time, allegations of individuals being beaten, allegations of torture. So you have to take a step back and say, whatever confession that you have, let me check whether the confession was obtained freely and voluntarily from the accused, or was it just to make sure that I want to relieve myself of this pressure of being beaten, I want to relieve myself of this pressure of being tortured in the manner in which I've been tortured in. So if there's evidence of such, it then means that whatever confession that you would have got cannot be taken to be as authentic as we want it to be. But again, it moves the ball into the arena of the state, because what the state is supposed to do is to say, because this particular individuals are alive, we are going to do everything that we can to make sure that we investigate this matter properly. we confession or not, at the end of the day, we are going to win this particular match because the evidence which we are going to show will leave no shadow of doubt that the individuals that are in the witness box are indeed the ones that are guilty, which is why it makes a bit of sense for certain individuals to say, if he had stated what Mr. Gininda is saying now at the start of the trial, then it could have made more sense as to how all these pieces come together, the linkages between the accused from accused number 1 to accused number 5. Why do we have 2 people entering the house and yet you have 5 individuals that are being branded as accused? State that at the start so that you make it easier for me as the presiding officer to put the pieces together. If you are going to wait up until the last minute, then maybe an inference can be drawn to say, maybe what we are doing now is to piece the evidence as we are going along, and it so conveniently fits in together in this one. And yet, there is a defense which the defense is going to state of saying, we are being coerced, we are being tortured. It is not free voluntary confessions that must be considered by the court.
And Mpumelelo, that's what we heard in the beginning from the accused. But also what's, quite astonishing is with Gininda, testifying in that court today, is the issue around him being able to place the role of each of the accused. That's quite something that's quite startling.
Remember that Mr. Gininda is the investigating officer, so he's the one who's handling the case. He's the one that takes out the case is going to be probably the first person who unraveled, according to him, what exactly happened on that particular day. So he is the one that would understand better the full storyline as to what exactly happened, the participation levels and the extent in which each individual participated in. Hence, he was the appropriate person to start with in the first place, so that he creates a perfect scene as to the involvement of all the other individuals that are there. And all you have to do at a later stage as the prosecution is to fit in the pieces together and provide collaborative evidence which is going to collaborate what Mr. Gininda said. Not all is lost at the moment, because the court will still consider that, because when it looks at the evidence, it looks at the evidence in its entirety and not on a piecemeal approach. So just as long as that piece of information has been entered into the record, it would be considered by the court. But it will not be considered without considering the contestation that has taken place. So when it comes to cross-examination in terms of the other accused, then we have to sit and listen carefully as to what are the responses going to be. Are there any holes which are going to be poked into the evidence that was provided by Mr. Gininda?
And Mrs. Zikalala, what are your expectations for the rest of this week now that, this trial has resumed?
Probably the contestation as to whether those particular statements or confessions were given freely and voluntarily. Maybe a bit of a hustle and tussle in terms of allegations of being tortured. Are there any medical sort of evidence that can be provided to collaborate such? And most importantly, on the other witnesses that are still left, are we going to get to hear the attorney that was on record for accused number 2? Because if you have him coming into court and stating all those things, then it means the work of the state is going to be much, much easier. But you must also remember there's something called attorney and client privilege, which may apply in this particular instance. So you may see him, even though his name is branded, someone that will not go to court and testify.
All right, Mpumelelo, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Mpumelelo Zikalala from Zikalala Attorneys. He is a legal practitioner, giving us an insight there into the resumption of the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial.